Hey, welcome back to the Guy Behind Bars podcast. I'm Jake Bodine, and I got a special guest with us, Juan Martinez, who is actually a two-time author, but has a past of spending over a decade in prison. And so, Juan, it's great to have you here with us. Excited to hear your story.
It's a pleasure, man.
I
It's a
know
pleasure being with you.
that you had a rough start at the beginning of your young adult life, but what God's doing through you now and how you're impacting people all over the world is inspiring. And I can't wait to hear more from you.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to be here, man. You don't know for how long, when I got the message of like, hey, we want to interview, I think that was like a highlight of my salvation career, of like my life. I just kind of saw the thing and I was like, yes, because I feel like this is kind of what I was called to do. So, I'm excited to be here with you, Jake.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, and I know that just going back to the beginning of your story, around 8 years old, is when your family split.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the shaking moment in your life that the trajectory and pathway that you were on kind of went south. If you want to start there and just kind of give us a little bit about your story in the context of that.
Sure, absolutely. So, I'm Puerto Rican, right? So, and I got to say that because then you'll understand the culture and all that stuff, right? So, I grew up in Hoboken, New Jersey, right outside of Manhattan. So, we were like 5 minutes from Times Square. So every day I would look at the skyline, the New York City skyline, but I would take it for granted because it was just the buildings to me, right?
Yeah.
And so we were on a block and we had some friends, and most of my friends, except for like one, had his dad. My best friend Mike, he didn't have his dad. His dad passed away. And so we were all just kind of to fend for ourselves and to figure out what men were. And so my dad leaves, and it's me and my mom, and the journey begins, man. I start watching, at that time, very influential on movies and stuff, watching a lot of movies. So, I'm watching Scarface 30 times a day, and all of these movies. But I gravitated to the things of the street. And even though I felt like those were seeds that were getting planted. I was actually like a good kid, and I played baseball, and my mom, she did the best she could with trying to keep me inside, but that, I don't think that was good either, because she sheltered me from life. So at 13, I had decided like, I'm done. And so she would call me out the window, and my friends would be like, mama's boy, and so I'm outside, and I just decided to try marijuana in a basement. We'll all go to the basement, smoke weed, and that started everything for me. At 13, I started selling mescalines, or little tiny things that were like acid, and that was the start. A friend of mine came at 14, and he was like, man, you're wasting your time. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you're wasting your time. You should sell coke. And so I started selling cocaine. In Hoboken, I grew up with blacks, Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, and a lot of Italians, right? And so I started to know how to navigate with people, and still playing sports through high school. But I was selling drugs, cocaine, mescalines, not just to our high school. I was selling to high schools. So, I would go on my lunch break. I would skip school. I think I hit like 80 days my senior year. My freshman year, I'm hanging out with all the seniors, and I'm also, my mom at this point, who really never had a drink, meets a man, and they get married, and then they buy a bar. So they got two bars. I'm 15 years old. I'm selling cocaine to adults, and man, it's getting me. I'm selling cocaine to adults, and I'm just hanging out at the bar, and I'm thinking that that's what life is all about. So, always in the projects, always in New York. Even though I grew up in Hoboken, at some point I would live in Brooklyn. At some point I'd spend all my time, like when I joke with my wife because she was a good girl. And I go, yeah, I've been to that club. Yeah, I've been to that club. So I was always in the clubs from Sunday through Monday. Like every day I was in different club. It's funny because for me, a lot of my cousins and friends and all that, they were like Latin Kings. I know Andy, I saw you guys interview him. They were Latin Kings, Black and Gold. You got the Nietas from Puerto Rico. You got all this stuff. I never really joined that. My whole back is tatted with a hitman because for me, I always wanted to be like a gangster. I never really wanted to be like in a gang. So by the time I'm graduating high school, I wound up joining the military because I wanted to get out. And I didn't have Jesus, so I didn't know how. And I always tell people, look, no matter where you go, there you are. You can't outrun yourself. And so I think that's one of the things I've learned now when looking back, right? Like, man, you can't outrun who you are.
Yeah.
And so I'm now, I'm smoking weed, I'm snorting rails, by the time I go into the military, it did help somewhat. But the minute I got out, I went right back to the scene. At that point, I started doing all these things. 'Cause remember, I didn't want to be the local street guy. I didn't want to be on the corner. So I go back. I get an apartment on the top of the bar. Become like a pretty much a pimp. I got prostitution ring going on the third floor. I decided I wasn't going to sell drugs on the corner. I was going to go in the strip clubs and the clubs. So I'm dressing in suits, 18, 19, 20, all those years. I'm in a suit. And my cousins are getting me in clubs that are like 25-year-old older. And I just thought I was a gangster. Like, I just, in my heart, I was Italian gangster. I have my friends. And so we knew gangs. But we're totally lost, man. We're in all the after hours. I've been in 11 gun incidents. Last one was in Fort Worth, where they almost took my life. So all of the stuff never really, I don't know, I was never really afraid of it. One day, while I'm selling all these drugs, we're in all the clubs. I'm lost, man. I'm a wild one. When you see Goodfellas and you see Pesci, that's probably me, the loudest one, because as I said, growing up in the projects and all that, pretty much I look white, and so all my cousins and everybody are dark, or they got tans. They look Puerto Rican. They got kinky hair. I got blue eyes and my hair looks good, and so I wasn't black enough and I wasn't Puerto Rican enough. So back then they called me Johnny, and so Johnny, he had to be louder than everybody else. If he was afraid, which there were many times I was afraid, I couldn't look afraid, and I had to do whatever I had to do because I needed to get respect, because they're already looking at me like the little skinny kid, Johnny, right? So, if they were going to fist fight, I'd come out with a bat. I'm just going to do things over the top, Pesci and Goodfellas type thing,
Yeah.
And what winds up happening is that as that continues, all this drug selling and all this crime, I'm toting 2 guns. I got a 25 in my Timberland boot, 9mm on my back, and all of this stuff is happening. I decide that I don't want to. I want to be bigger. So I've watched enough movies, and it's funny because I say, man, you can have faith in the lie of the enemy, because I didn't know nobody in Texas. I told my mom one day, I said, don't worry, Mom, I'm going to take care of you. And I said, I'm going to take over the world. And I really meant that, So I've been in clubs with near-death experiences with mob guys, credit card stuff, anything you could think of in the life of crime that wasn't really gang-banging. It was more, again, we had a group of guys that, I'm not going to mention who they are, but a group of guys who dealt with artists and all this stuff. And, we had laundromats and VCRs. I don't know if you remember. They were like Blockbusters, but they were all storefronts, and everybody had something. At that point, I decided I was going to come to Texas, and I didn't know anybody. So I took a Greyhound bus after I've sold drugs in Virginia, Connecticut, Florida. I got numbers from Texas, Florida, every place I've been to, because you can't outrun yourself, right? I always tell people I was incarcerated for 10 years on the physical bars, but for 23 years around the bars I placed around my heart. In other words, I was incarcerated before I got incarcerated in the way I think.
Yeah, wow.
And so I wound up coming out here to Texas. I took a Greyhound bus, knew nobody, a backpack full of drugs and a bunch of cash, because I knew that if I needed money, I could just go to any local bar, any club, and it's kind of like everything else. You have a friend that knows a friend, So on my journey here, I did a little bit of Virginia, and then I wound up here, and I was going to do this major dope deal with a guy that I had met in McAllen. Because I get to Texas. When I get to Texas, I get off that bus and I meet 2 girls that are going to go into Mexico. And at that time, you didn't need a passport. You just needed an ID. So I got a yellow Anichi suit. I'm loud and I'm smoking. And they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, we do that in New York in the bus stop, And so you can't do that here, So I put out the blunt and they go, we're going into Mexico. I wind up meeting the number 9 cartel guy of that time that was bringing in most of the marijuana into McAllen, Donna, and all those other places, Edinburgh. So I'm there and I have a blue warrant. I get stopped. I have a blue warrant.
And what's a blue warrant?
Oh, man. That's when, some things they won't bring you back for, But on a blue warrant, they're gonna bring you back. It doesn't matter. You're coming back. If
Got
you
it.
get
So
caught,
if you go to Mexico, you're getting extradited back
you're
to
getting
the US.
extradited. On a blue warrant, there's no question. You know, if you don't have a blue warrant, they might leave you there and you might get out. You know, and if you pass around the place that has the warrant on you, then you don't get arrested.
Yeah.
But if you have a blue warrant, you just know you're sitting until they come pick you up. So I have one of those, and they stop me. So I get on a bus. I'm the lowest guy on the totem pole on that bus. Everybody else is like Con Air type stuff, you know. But when I'm on that bus, I was sitting next to a guy. We're shackled to each other. You know, we're shackled around our feet. We're shackled everywhere. And he tells me, "You want to make money?" And so I go like, "How much money are you talking about, right?" And so, you know, you get into that dialogue. This guy's from Ohio. It's actually in that first book, this story, right? And so he goes, "I'm from Ohio," and I go, he gives me this address. So I say that every day to myself. I'm shackled. I can't write it down. So people go, "New York," because when I came out here, everybody started calling me New York J. And so, you know, the Johnny Lane left. You know, they gave me another alias. When you're in the streets, you know, they give you tons of names where you go, right? So I'm saying this address, I don't know, 18 days. And so people would say, "New York." I say, "Shut up, man." And I'd say 506 West 6th Street. So I would go to sleep because they, you know, a 3-day trip, they can turn it into as long as possible because you got all those big time criminals that, you know, billions, millions of dollars, right? And it's Con Air. You with me?
Yeah.
I just wound up on that bus. And so this guy tells me that. I wind up saying that address. I go to sleep, wake up 506 West 6th Street. It was like insanity, man. I said it over and over again. When I get to New Jersey, I have a beard like Fidel Castro, and I'm saying 506 West 6th Street. I still remember it today.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the God Behind Bars podcast. This is Jake Bodine, one of your hosts here, and I just wanted to encourage you to like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to the God Behind Bars podcast, and then set your notifications to be alerted every time we upload a new episode so that you can be up to date in hearing what God is doing in and through the men and women that are behind bars. Continue listening to this episode of the God Behind Bars podcast.
It was ingrained, man. I get out. I said, "Somebody give me a pencil." They give me a pencil. When you get locked up, I immediately go with, you know, the kings and the nietas, and, you know, you just grow because you're Puerto Rican, and so that you can either rock with them or not rock with them, and you don't want to be in prison without rocking with them. So in prison, yeah, you just fall in. You know, it's like the most racial space in the planet, right? You got in Jersey and New York, you got the Puerto Rican, the Hispanic TV, you got the black TV and the white TV, and usually the white TV gets taken over by the black people. And so you got, you know, you really only got 2 TVs, even though they say they got. And so usually the white guys wind up watching TV with us, which is crazy. But, you know, all of this is happening. I'm sitting there. I start writing a letter to this address. This address leads me to probably, you know, because, you know, you say you'll never do things. So I used to kick people out of the hallway when I was in Jersey, and I was selling, you know, because I went from selling cocaine to selling crack, from selling crack to selling heroin. And then you pick the one you like in a weird way, right? You're like, all right, this is the one I like. I don't want to carry a bunch of marijuana. I want to carry a few bricks and make a lot more money than, right? I didn't like heroin because you got to get up every morning where people are on E, meaning that when they're on E, they're on empty. It's the only drug that, like, somebody might kill you because you don't have their drug. Their whole body goes into pain. You know, they got stomach aches. They got everything. They're just jacked up. They call it on empty, on E. And so 5 in the morning, they're going to line up. It's like New Jack City. They're going to line up, and you're going to give them heroin. I really never liked that, and I used to hate the fact that they would shoot up, and I hated needles. Fast forward, I get to Texas. You know, I literally get out. I wind up taking a bus to Texas. Now, from the guy I met in McAllen, and to this guy in Florida, I was gonna go and I was gonna make this connection, and I was gonna get back on my feet. I would have made 20 to 40,000 on my first dope deal, and then I would have just kept moving from there. And that's what I usually did when I got out of prison. I got out, you know. State jail was the worst because I feel like state jail in Texas, they always drop you off at the spot that they picked you up from, which I think is crazy, right? Because they're almost like setting you up for failure.
Yeah, you're gonna go right back into what
totally
the same crowd. Yeah,
totally. I mean, your friend lives on that corner. You know, you're like, hey. So they did that to me in Texas a couple times, and now I wind up going to Breckenridge, Texas, and I asked this girl who picks me up, because this place is like, it's a small little town. Now here you got the city guy in a small little town. In my life, I ain't never seen something like this. When I tell you, like, I was in culture shock like 1,000 times, you know? So I'm like, man, what is this? And I'm thinking, this dude played me. I go, where's the strip club? They're like, there ain't nothing here like that. They're like, we got an Allsup's.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what? Somehow, I wind up sitting with this girl. I said, can you get, where's the drugs at? So I'm looking for the cocaine. I got like 2 days. So I sit there and she brings me meth. I get introduced to methamphetamines. Never say that you're not going to do nothing. The devil will put you on a slide or a ride that you can't get off. So we start smoking meth. I missed the dope deal and I stay stuck in Breckenridge, Texas. I don't know nobody. I just know this girl, this one girl, and this one girl. I said, man, I'm like, I don't have no money. What am I going to do? She's like, I don't know, right? So then I kick on. So that's the thing, you know, when you come from the concrete jungle, you kind of learn to adapt to things real fast. And the fact that I understood personalities and people, like I was almost glad. Now I look back,
Yeah.
and I can see everything God did, because the enemy was trying to destroy who I was, right? And God took it around and turned it around. So I know how to talk to a white person, an Italian person, a rich person, a poor person. I sold to dentists. I sold to doctors. I also sold to people in the hood. So I can morph into whatever. So here I'm in this small town, but I've never dealt with a small town person, which was interesting. So I wind up meeting, they take me to this dope house, and there's a guy from the Aryan Brotherhood. He's almost like in charge of it. And then you have these two other guys that are like helping him push all the meth in this town. Okay, because this is where I start learning about dope cooks and all of these things that I never heard of in my life. I'm like, what is that? So I see a girl though, but I used to like to party. And the enemy will do this too. Between a rock and a hard place. And I'm thinking, how am I going to fit in? How am I going to write everything? Like everything's going through my mind. I don't have no money. I don't have an aunt. I don't have a cousin. I don't have no Latin Kings for sure. I don't have no gangsters there. I don't have anything. I'm in a small town, right? One girl got few teeth. They've been doing math, you know. And I go, hey, she shoots up. And I go, I want to do that. Worst thing I could ever do in my life, man. I'll show you the picture when we're done. Maybe you could have it. You could post it. But I wind up going from this guy in suits, pushing weight, doing all this stuff, partying, you know, I guess a controlled party, if you could call it that, even though it wasn't. But never to this point. I wind up sitting in that chair, and I tell them to, to load it up. And they put, they talk in thickness, 20 thick, 30 thick, and I pull up my sleeve, and I don't ever want to shoot up,
Now that the 20 thick, 30 thick, that's like the potency.
The potency, that's how much dope they put on a spoon. That's like, 20, 10, 20, 30.
Wow.
And the thicker it is, the better. So they put it in a spoon, throw a little cotton, right? I don't want to shoot up. I'm only doing this to figure out, and I remember I'm the extremist. So I'm like, I want to do that. And literally everybody in the room goes, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yep." I pull up my sleeve, but I'm not going to shoot myself. So I hold my arm and I turn to the side. And that at that moment, man, let me tell you something. I understood why people shot up. My feet got hot. It went all the way to the top of my head. It was the most thrilling ride ever, right? The guy from the Aryan Brotherhood, crazy, because usually he would have got me because I'm Puerto Rican. But, that's why I was like grateful for the blue eyes and the light skin, right? So I go, he says, man, come with me. Because, for some reason I was always funny. I always had a personality, And that's how I pretty much also lived in a lot of those scenarios. Every club, I told my wife, I said, any club I ever went to, I always met the top guy. It was weird. I wasn't even looking for it, but somehow I meet the top guy. In any scenario I've been in, I've always, and today it kind of still happens a little bit. It's kind of weird. Cool, I guess, but weird,
Yeah.
So the guy says, man, come with me to Fort Worth. And so when I go to Fort Worth, he's buying meth from Mexicans. I speak Spanish because I might look white, but my first language was Spanish. Yo hablo español bien, And so I talk to the Mexican guy. We get back and that dude gets busted. So he's the main guy, but I met the Mexican guy and I speak Spanish. So I'm like, they're like, we'll go with you. I'm like, nah, y'all ain't going with me. I'm going to go. And so they're like, they had to trust me. Everybody gave me their money. And there was the beginning of New York J selling meth. So I wound up going to talk to this Mexican guy, and before you know it, I become the main meth distributor. All of 30, all of 20, all people in Rockwall, all the way down to like Abilene, Odessa, Midland, from bikers to truckers. So I winded up stationing myself in Breckenridge, Weatherford, and Mesquite. And so I would hit all those three places and then kind of just sell dope everywhere. The problem was I had shot up. So that just took my life in a spiral. Obviously I had kids. I didn't see my kids. I didn't talk to my kids. I just kept everybody away from me, which is sometimes I think, and I was like, might have been a good thing. Because now, you'll hear later how they came back, but probably a good thing because I probably would have ruined them. And so now I'm destroying all these people's homes. Like I'm taking back here in Jersey, I started, selling from the corner, then the prostitution house. Then I was selling in South Jersey to lawyers, doctors. When I look back, I think, man, all these people were smoking crack, doing cocaine. I'm talking about regular people in society that don't get caught and go to prison because they got the money to get out. You fast forward, and I'm destroying whole entire cities. I remember times when I am, selling all this meth. And to me, it was never a problem. To me, it was always like I was having a party, but I used to, when I sat with the prostitutes, I would sit, smoke weed with them and tell them, man, you shouldn't be doing this. It's crazy, right? I was like, you shouldn't be doing this, man. You should go home to your kids. So I'm like almost pastoring. I just didn't have Jesus in my heart.
Yeah.
You with me?
Yeah.
I'm always looking at dudes and going, man, why are you doing this? Or right? But I'm selling it. And I always thought I was doing people a favor when I was giving them drugs. I just thought life, people ask me all the time, 700, all these interviews, and they've asked, hey, did you feel bad? I was like, never. I always thought like, man, I sell drugs. And I'm kind of like, and people need this to live. And the only reason I keep getting arrested is because they can't tax the money I'm making. You fast forward and they're trying to legalize marijuana, which I'm totally against, like big time. I understand there's little, people say, well, medicinal and all that. I get all that. But the reality is we don't know how to control that. Like everybody now has, everybody's like medicinal. Like, nah, I understand that and maybe they could fix that. But the reality is that starts like that, and then it ruins whole neighborhoods and it ruins whole cities. I used to tell my wife when, in the beginning when I got out, I said, hey, she goes, why don't you just come to Houston? I said, girl, if I go now, I said, I'll mess you up. I'll mess you up, your kids up, your family up, that whole block you live on up, the city next to it, because that's the type of guy I was, So when I look at my life and I'm shooting all this meth and all of this stuff is just happening, I wind up getting to a place where, these Bloods try to set me up because they were selling to all the small towns. And at some point, those guys I knew, but I didn't know. I'm still not from here. So, and even today I know who he is, and he knows I know who he is because we bumped into each other after I got saved, right? And I could tell, you live in the streets, you could tell when a person starts, moving around funny. And so that guy, I had went to him one time, and I had already, he helped me to start, and I was already superseding him. So he set me up in Fort Worth. I got to Fort Worth, and I had a near-death experience. They beat me for about 35 minutes. With a gun. I had a girl that was a driver. They took all the money, took all the drugs, they took the car. I'm laying on the ground. I believe that's the day I got saved. Like nobody could tell me any different. Like that's the day I believe I got saved. I'm laying on the ground. I'm full of blood. The side of my head was about here. What was on this side? It was about here. The scar I have on my lip is from that. It was out here. I remember because I had to fit it to the side. I couldn't put it on. And so it's out here looking like the Elephant Man, and I'm full of blood because I kept lifting my hand because the girl, I didn't want her to get shot or raped. And so I kept looking, and so they just kept beating me and beating me and beating me and beating me. And so I hear the guy click back. And so I don't know where I'm going, I'm hoping, because I know heaven and hell because I was raised Catholic. So I was raised religiously, never really pointed to Jesus. So they did the best they could, and I don't minimize that season of my life. But I know at that point when I hear the gun clack, I think I'm going to die. And check it out. All of these little moments of the guy that set me up at one time, he had me in his kitchen and he said, "You know you're going to hell, right?" Random. I'm living in the Bible Belt. That's why I'm passionate about evangelism. Nobody ever talked to me about Jesus. Nobody ever stopped me and said, "Hey, let me present you with the word." Or, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I look like a drug dealer. I had the doors, the car, the screens. You with me? Nobody ever talked to me about Jesus. Nobody ever had the time to stop. And so this guy randomly in the kitchen tells me that. So a series of events. He tells me that. I go, "Whatever, dude, you tripping." You know what I tell him? I say the Our Father. Because I thought, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." I said, "Man, I'm good." That's all. I thought I was going to heaven. But at that moment, I thought I was going to die. So I yell at the top of my lungs, the only way I know, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come." He never pulls the trigger. They run. I don't know why. I'm thinking some people say, "Oh, there was probably an angel popped up or something." Everybody
Yeah,
has that thing.
Gabriel.
Yeah, Gabriel done popped up on my behalf. But the dude never pulled. And once you pull back, you're shooting. Shot me in the leg, shot me in the head. He would have shot me. I'm in the middle of nowhere in Fort Worth, too. And so they get in the car. I'm full of blood. I had real baggy jeans, and so the phone was down here. I had the little flip, and I hit the 911, and they came out, and they go, "Bad drug deal?" I go, "No, sir." But it was so crazy that the minute they let me go, I went to the hospital. I get the butterfly stitches. When I'm in the hospital, I call another drug dealer to re-up. Not only that, I go back to the guy's house. He's sitting like this with a shotgun in his house. I go, "Man, you all right?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm good. You good?" Right? I mean, what am I going to do? It ain't like I can call my cousins, but I want them to know that I know.
Mm.
So I went back, and these are the little things that I'm like, man, that was crazy as hell. Like, cause I'm sound mind now, right? It's like, why would you go back? They would have finished the job.
Yeah.
So I played it off. He let me go. I still go and I start selling drugs. Nothing changes. Crazy.
Why do you
Right?
think that is? Like, honestly, I just even think I can understand the beginning of your story from, hey, nobody knows my name to now everybody knows my name, and the thrill of that. But then we also get to a point to where, like, we know what we're doing is wrong. You're counseling girls in the strip club, telling them, "Go home, be with your kids." Like, why are you doing this? And at the same time, you're the one that's condoning all of it pretty
All day
much,
long.
right? And then we get put in these situations where it's almost near death. It's like our final hour. We call on the name of Jesus, get saved in the moment, and then boom, we fall right back into where we had.
Totally.
Why do you feel that?
Well, I believe today that that's the day I got saved. But you just don't yell out, and then the work stops.
Mm.
I don't have no word in me. I don't know what's truth. When Jesus comes to set the captives free, he doesn't come to like open the door and let you out of the jail. It's in here. So he's setting you free from the lie you've believed. I'm still believing those lies. I'm
Yeah.
thinking they're upset at me. The government's upset at me because they can't tax me. That's what I believe. So that's my truth. So as long as that's my truth, I'm never going to change. You change when you accept his way above your way, when you accept his truth above what you think is true. There are many people walking around that think this is true and it's not. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to a cousin of mine, a little nephew, and he had a Scarface shirt. By the time I was done talking to him about what that represents, I said, "You like your friend to die on fentanyl?" I said, "You have any friends?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Would you like him to die on fentanyl?" He's like, "No." So I gave him this whole story. "You like when your cousins get locked up?" "No." "Do you like this person dying?" "No." I go, "What does Scarface stand for?" And so then he's like, "Well, I mean, it's a movie." I go, "It's a movie that promotes drugs, that promotes everything you just say you don't like. Now you got a choice."
Mm.
He goes, "Man, I never looked at it that way." See, we don't stop to we just judge and point finger, but we don't actually go, "Hey, why do you believe that?" And then let me show you what it really is. And so that's the problem right there. So for me, even though I could look back and I believe, because that's the day I feel like I really cried out, because things started happening after that,
Yeah.
right? So before
Which most Christians don't understand, by the way.
oh
It's
yeah,
like, I think that we often think that hey, the second that I surrender my life to Jesus, boom, now I'm a new creation.
All day long.
Right? That's like, it's almost you're born again, which is truth.
Yeah.
However, there is a process.
All day long.
Yeah, there's a what I know, and then what I know I should be doing, and it takes time to get there and let the Holy Spirit
Absolutely
work through us.
Well,
right?
maybe you don't even know what you just said.
Mm.
They say born again, but they don't do born again.
Mm.
You know, to know is to become one. It's the mystery of the gospel.
Yeah.
Right? That's why I'm passionate about the marriage stuff, because really the mystery of the gospel, a good marriage really represents the gospel.
Yep.
You cannot remove the gospel from a marriage. It's two people that have died to themselves to serve one another. The mystery in Ephesians 5, when he's talking about the marriage, he says, is really the church. We all become one because we're single-minded of one purpose, and our head is Jesus Christ. Bring that into the home. That's why you shouldn't even start a ministry if you don't have your home right, because you don't understand the gospel. How will you lead others if you're not allowing him to lead you, and you lead your family, and so on and so forth?
Which, let's rabbit trail for that, because we have a lot of men that watch on this podcast.
Dope.
And I think that often Ephesians 5, us as men, we get the wives should submit to their husband part really, really good. In fact, I would argue, if I can, that Paul should have flipped it. He should have put men should love their wives like Christ loves the church. And then your wife will want to submit to you.
All day long.
I submit to Christ because of my love for him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's what he's done for me, what I know he wants to do in and through me, which causes me to want to be submissive, to want to serve him, to want to make him proud. And so if we are, as men, go first in every one of our relationships, we're the tip of the spear. You want your wife to love you more, then love her more. You want her to respect you more, then respect her more.
I'm going to give it to you this way, okay? Because my wife is flawed. So I've always looked at loving my wife. So when I do something for my wife, I'm really doing it for him. Now what she sees is me doing something for her. And I do it that way because if she's flawed and imperfect, let's say you're my friend, right? And we start building friendship from this, and we start working. Hey, what's up, man? My part is always going to be my part. And my part is dependent upon him, not you, because you're flawed. So if you mess up, then I might treat you according to how you live for me. But I'm treating you based upon how he lives for me, and it makes my life a little easier. Because then I don't have to be wishy-washy with a person. I'm always going to treat you how Jesus treats me. When I miss it, I missed it on him.
Yeah, I love that.
And he's perfect. So him being perfect means he'll never mess up. Like if I'm doing something for him, he ain't never going to mess up.
Yeah, no, for sure.
He's like, you going to mess up, Juan, but I ain't going to mess up. It ain't like a two human relationships. See, we live this way. And then the overflow of what people get is based upon that relationship with him. So most people don't understand the born again experience. That means you have to unlearn everything. Hey, anything you come in, you like this room. He's like, yeah, gut it all. You're like, but I like these paintings. He's like, yeah, I don't like them. Gut it. You're like, what? Scratch. Brand new. Let me teach you how to be a son. First thing I had to learn was be a son. His son. I didn't know how to be a son. I know how to be a rebellious son. I know how to be a son that lies, a son that cheats, a son that steals, a son that... I don't know how to be a son. So I got to learn how to be a son. And being a son, he taught me how to be a father. And being a father, he taught me how to be a husband. And being a husband, he's taught me how to do everything I know how to do now. That any good in me is him. If I remove that, well, we're all in trouble. Are you with me? So when we talk about this person transforming and changing, they want to hold on to their old life. But the Bible's clear. To see the kingdom, you have to be born again. So I'm blinded. Bro. I go through this, and I'm sitting in a car one day, and I'm driving. The only day I could count on my hand how many times I've been sober. From like maybe 22, 23 after the military, how many times I've been sober in one hand. Did you think about that for a minute? So 23, 22 to 36. I carried Newport Box 100 full of blunts. So I'd smoke, shoot up. Well, smoke in the beginning and sniff, but later I would start shooting up when I get to Texas. I'm in a car. I'm sober this day, completely sober. I sit in the car, and this is one of those moments. Those other things that happened to me, and I'm sitting in the car, and I look up at the clouds. And weird, because I even did this in prison, but I look up at the clouds and I just start like bawling, like a faucet turned on. The girl gets all slow mo, which is the clip I had sent you that TBN did. She gets all like, "What's the matter?" I'm looking at her, I'm crying. I'm crying. I look up at the clouds and I hear this. Never read the Bible before, but it was John 10:10. He said, "Why are you killing, stealing, and destroying the very lives that I'm giving people? I'm trying to give people life, and you keep destroying them." Because I would go into a home and destroy it. It didn't matter if you're a school teacher. Before you know it, I got your husband hooked. Then I have your home. Then I'm driving your car. I have your wife, kids, everything. And I'm doing that at super fast rates, right? Kids are in the room. Parents are getting high. I'm like, go to work. That kind of thing. Now I'm like running his home. So I'm crying, crying, crying. And I hear that, but I don't know what to do with that. So that's the next step, right? So over here I yelled, Jesus, right? Over here, the next step. So I accept the fact. I'm like, man, this is God speaking to me. I stopped crying, like instantly. That's how I knew it was God, because it was crazy. It was weird. So I go, either I'm crazy. I'm sober too now. So that made it even more, right? Because I've only been sober this many times.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I'm sober and I'm hearing this. This is wild. If I was smoking, maybe. The girl then turns to normal voice and she's like, are you all right? We're going to get busted. You're tripping. I mean, I lost it. So I go, yeah, I'm fine. But now I'm delivering these. I got about 8 ounces of meth and I'm delivering these things. And I'm pretty much looking at ladies and I'm going, I hear this. This is no Bible, nothing. I'm getting convicted is what's happening. I'm like, which is weird because, you read the Bible, then you get convicted. For me, everything God's done has been backwards a little bit. I understood conviction later, but I'm handing this and he's like, she's going to be a prostitute. I'm like, I'm handing this, right? So I start telling people when I'm smoking, I start telling them all, yo, God's talking to me. And they all start laughing. New York, you're crazy. You're too high. I go, nah, I'm telling you, God's talking to me. I get arrested on something that I didn't do. They kick in the door. They got feds everywhere. All these people, in my Weatherford spot. Because I had a house in Mineral Wells. I forgot about that one. And then I would drive to the spot. And when I get into the spot, they come in, guns blaze, you aggravated robbery. Aggravated robbery. I go, aggravated robbery. Now I know I don't. Because remember, I have the gangster mentality. I'd rather pay somebody to beat somebody up. Why am I going to beat you up? Like, I don't have to do that. I almost got a thrill out of like, put him on the phone and then somebody punching him and then me hanging up the phone. You with me? Like I used to love that, right? And I wind up going to the jail and they said, man, you aggravated robbery on this guy. And now this guy has set me up. He knocked on the door and with a prostitute and then he pretty much hit him in the head and stole his wallet, like $100 credit cards. And so I'm like, I had like $5,600 bills at that moment. And I go, why would I take, I'm telling these guys. So they go, you want to do, I said, give me a lie detector test. And they said, yeah, because I've been kicked out of Weatherford. I got kicked out of Eastern. They said, if we, kind of like the cowboy movies, if you ever see you around these parts, we'll lock you up and throw away the key. Like that's really happened to me, And so this guy, he says, okay, I'll give you the lie detector test. We're in this lie detector test, and all of a sudden I tell the dude, like, he asked me, is your name Juan Martinez? Yes. All this stuff. Are you Puerto Rican? Yes, right? Then he starts asking me questions. Were you there that night? And hit him in the head. I said, no. And then he goes, you want me to help you? It's crazy how they do this stuff, man. He goes, you want me to help you? I go, well, yeah. He goes, all right. Well, tell me the truth because this test isn't showing that. I go, what? I jump up and I go, what the hell? I don't have no aggravated robbery charges in my life. I said, if anything, I'm a drug dealer. And I start on tape, I'm yelling, I'm a drug dealer. Because I don't want to go down. I'm facing 25 years. Aggravated robbery, going in somebody's house, That's not good. And so I'm like, nah, I'm a drug dealer. They had the guys from Breckenridge behind the window and people who've arrested me before, and they come out and they're like, hey, Juan. And I'm like, oh, man, right? So they wind up giving me 4 years in this last bid, and instead of the 25. The first pod they put me in Weatherford, I was all Aryan Brotherhood again. Crazy. I just thought, wow. But I knew the other guys, so I know how to talk to them too. But this time, I meet a guy. My wife thinks he's an angel. God will put people in your life. I pray that you listen, even if they're listening to this podcast right now or any other podcast. My prayer is that the people listening would listen. Jesus always said, those who have ears, let them hear what the Spirit is saying. And most people, he said that, and everybody has ears. Everybody in this room has ears. I've been to Europe and everything. Everybody got ears. The problem is we don't listen. And Jesus is the only one who always said that. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
I'm like, man, we don't listen. Now in Christ, we should work on listening. And the joke is, oh, men don't listen. Then I'm like, well, how do they even hear God then? Scary, scary thing. So I pray that they listen. You know, before we came here, we found out a guy that didn't listen and pretty much died. Young guy, left 4 daughters. Rest in peace, David. You know, he just literally right before coming here. He didn't listen. I go into the prisons all the time and guys, man, I saw you over here preaching. I should have listened. They didn't listen. You know, all of these things are happening and people ain't listening. So my prayer is that they listen as we're talking here, right? Because that's important.
Yeah, not just in here in your mind, but in your heart, like
Totally.
accepting.
Yes, that's what he says. That's really how you bear fruit. If you're good soil, that means you're one that listens. He says accept, right? Hear the word, accept it, and then you bear fruit 30, 60, 100-fold, right? So he makes it grow. Your job and my job is to be good soil, hear the word, accept it, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, like just I know I'm 20 years into my relationship with Christ, and there's
Nice.
still parts of my past every day that like I still want to do at times.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And it's one of those where you're going to have the thoughts, you're going to have the cravings, you're going to have the desire, and it's dying to that every
Absolutely.
single day, whatever
Absolutely.
you're dealing with.
Yeah. And so so I'm in the prison. My wife says this guy's an angel. So I see this guy. He comes. There's a gate like this, and it's like 2 U forms. And so you can meet at the gate. He's on the other side. I'm on this side. And so I go there, and, you know, I come out of my cell, and he's like, hey, meets me by the gate. I don't know this guy. He's like, I'm here for you. I go, for me? He goes, yeah, I'm here for you. I go, whatever, bro. He goes, I'm a pastor. And I don't know what that is. I only knew bald guy with a collar, priest. You know what I'm saying? My whole life.
Yeah.
So he's like,
Yeah,
I'm like
grew
a
up Catholic.
pastor.
Yeah.
I grew up Catholic, right? So, you know, he goes, no, you know, I'm a pastor. And so he tells me a little bit what a pastor. And I go, whatever, man. Bro, you in here. You tripping, right? Everybody's innocent up in here. So I go, I get in my cell the next day. He's prostrated on the ground, full prostrate like this, you know? And on a blanket. And I'm like waiting for this dude because that night when I went in, I started thinking because of the other stuff. So I'm like, man, God, is this, you know? I think God smiled that day because I actually started talking to him. I used to only talk to him like this: Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Our Father, who art in heaven. You know, never really a personal relationship. This guy, he gets up and I go work out, eat my soup, take a shower. He's still there. He gets up like an hour later, bro. I go, hey, he's got my attention. I go, bro, what were you doing there? He goes, I was talking to God for you. I go, what? You said, how many Our Fathers? I told him, how many Our Fathers did you say? He's like, I was having a conversation.
Yeah.
So he's like, you ever read your Bible? So I go, well, nah. He tells me to read my Bible. And he tells me to eat it like chewing the cud. He starts explaining the digestive system and all that. And the way I understand it and the way I usually teach people, you know, I go, look, when I first got to prison, I got a Snickers bar in my commissary. And I got that Snickers bar, man. And it's a little different. Out here, you buy a Snickers bar, you eat that joker, you gone. In there, it's your first commissary. You don't know when you're going to the store again. So you rip a little quarter piece of that. And your plan is not to eat the whole thing. Even though you wind up eating the whole thing, you start off with that little piece. And when you bite that Snickers in there, bruh, you catch every layer. You catch the chocolate, the caramel. I mean, it's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like an explosion of chocolate. It's the best Snickers you ever had in your life, bro. Right? I go, that's how you're supposed to read the Bible. The Bible is never about how much you read, even though reading is great. It's about how much you meditate on the word day and night, and you'll be successful in all you do. He doesn't say read a lot and you'll be successful. You can read a lot in time, but it's more about the chewing It's more about digesting and understanding. It's more about an exchange, heaven and earth in your heart, right? So I go in there and I start reading my Bible. And it's like, I don't know if you ever watched Beetlejuice, how the hand grabs his face and puts him in the bowl. That's what happened to me. I just started understanding, bro. I don't know how. I read Proverbs, and then I started reading the gospel. All night I did that. All night. It was just like, oh my. So I get on my knees and I just start crying. And I don't know how to repent. You know how to know how to repent at that time. But I remember feeling so bad for the first time in my life. I start like, Lord, forgive me for what I've said to women. Forgive me. I just start confessing, throwing up, pretty much like just telling them I'm sorry for everything. I'm identifying the sin for what it is. Henceforth, the truth.
Yeah.
I'm identifying the sin for what it is, right? The way I treated women, sin. The way I got high, sin. Selling drugs, sin. It's the first time in my life I start calling those things, and I don't know that I'm repenting, but that's what I'm kind of doing, right? And I because I'm ready to go in a different direction, because now I know the truth. It's the knowledge of the truth, right? The knowledge, becoming one with the truth. It's not knowing of the truth. So a lot of people know of Scripture. They don't know Scripture. It's just totally different, right? And so in that time, I come out. He's like, man, fast forward that guy one day. I wake up in the morning. They put me I was like Joseph. They put me as a trustee. All this is going great. I go, man, can I make this guy an extra meal? It's like meeting Jake, and Jake's the guy, right? I said, can I make him an extra meal? Because I don't want to steal no more. And so they told me, go ahead. So I make him an extra meal. I come out there. I still don't remember his name. I'm hoping that one day I do an interview and the name pops out, because I would like to find this guy, man. And if you're watching, man, please get at me, because I just wish I could find this guy to let him know the impact he had in my life. I mean, he changed my life, bro. Like Jesus, but through this guy. And so, man, he's not there. He's not there, bro. They say he's innocent. I said, innocent? I was tripping out now. I'm like, what do you mean? They said, yeah. Because he had told me, he said, man, the only reason I'm here is because, I used to party, my wife partied. He said, eventually, I stopped. I became a pastor. My wife continued in the streets. We weren't together anymore. She came, wanted money. She gets in the car. She starts yelling. The neighbors call the cops. She throws the crack pipe and the crack in the car. It's my car. So I went to jail. But he goes, but I wasn't mine. And I didn't believe him, Sorry for that. I didn't believe him, because I was like, whatever, man. Y'all were partying and, you're here. But no, he was innocent, and it was really how he said it. And so I never seen him again. I don't remember his name. I don't know where he's at. I've never talked to him again. And all the lives that are getting impacted was because he made a choice. This is why I love God Behind Bars. Because each and every one of us can make a choice to better. We always complain about stuff, and nobody wants to make that decision to come alongside, to partner, to help. That one word. That guy in prison, he was in prison, and he didn't waste that time. He didn't focus on 50 people. He focused on me. Me has reached a ton of people, which is wild, right?
And I think that's what causes paralyzation in people on both sides of the spectrum. Like, some want the big platform and have a ton of influence. Others don't want influence or can't see themselves having influence. But really, like, God smiles on the person that saves one just as big as he smiles on the person that saves 1,000. And I just think of, like, that individual, like, if his entire time here on earth was boiled down to one person, and God used him to reach one person, and it's through probably a time in his life where he's like, what the heck, God, why am I here?
Yeah.
Like, I've served you, I'm a pastor, like, and now this false allegation has come out against me, and I'm in prison. And it was all for that moment. For you to be reached. Because look at what God's doing through your life now.
Absolutely.
Wrote two books.
Yeah.
Evangelist.
Yeah.
Helping couples all over the United States with
sir.
their marriage and having a Christ-centered marriage. And then hosting a radio show and being on TBN and TBN Salsa. And go down the list of the platforms that God's given you to share your story. And how that one person, that individual impacted, meaning you, has probably transformed tens of thousands of lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I'm gonna publicly thank you because for the opportunity of being on Pando.
Mm.
Because man, it has done. At first you try to convince people, hey, this is what we need to do.
Mm.
It has just, I'll leave my pulpit on a Sunday service and give it to another pastor to go preach in the prisons because that's just my heart. And I feel like when I preach there, I could take the same message and really get in their hearts because I know the guy. I know the guy that's stealing ham from the kitchen. I know the sweet-in-law stories. I know all the stories. So I'm not just the average pastor. Being on Pando gives me the ability that when I'm not there, I'm there
Mm.
all the time.
Yeah.
And then they come out and it's kind of cool. They wind up going to the church and then they wind up like, oh man, I've been watching you for 3 years. They give me this hug like we know each other for lifetimes. So I want to I want to thank you and I appreciate you giving us the opportunity, Pando app, and just for everything that you're doing because it's reaching a lot of people. And if people don't know, then they know now, because it is.
Well, it's our greatest honor, man. Thank you. Thanks for being here and sharing your story with
without
us.
a doubt.
One thing that I always wrap up each and every one of our podcasts with is the question, why Jesus? For you, obviously heard a lot of your story, but somebody that's sitting on the fence, possibly still a user or still living the thrill of the whole drug dealing game, like, what would you say to that individual and why Jesus?
Can I put a bow on the end of the story so people can
Oh,
know
yeah,
how
yeah,
it
yeah.
ends?
Sorry.
No, you're
Yeah.
good. You're good. I just don't want to leave them on like, what's going on now,
Yeah.
So
For
I guess
episode 2, tune in on
episode, yeah, no, we're good. I guess spit out of the mouth of the whale. Like, I'm gone to Nineveh, but everywhere that I sold death, I started going. I went back to Breckenridge. 1,500 people come out on the first outreach because I kept telling them God's talking to me, and they're like, no way. And then now I'm gonna go tell them about God, and so that everybody shows up. We start doing that around the country. We have this mission. I love when people do missions outside of the country. But I'm very passionate about Mission America. And I feel like we need to clean up our backyard and reach the men and the women that are here before we start doing everything out there. Now, I know some people are called out there. I'm just saying what we believe. And so we've been doing that. And we became pastors of a church called Get Wrapped. I think it's, we have about 3 services. We need a building. We're like tripping now because nobody fits. So, if you're out there and you want to give us
And where's your church located?
Houston, Texas. It's on 23221 Aldine Westfield over there in the middle between Spring and the Woodlands. It's right in the middle. Hopefully we need land, bro. There's so many things we want to do. We want to do transitional housing, like all this stuff. And so we're doing that. We do Love Wins marriage conferences all around the United States, as you said. I wound up getting my doctorate last year, so that was dope.
Yeah.
I say all these accolades because I say them because I want people to know that where you are right now, that's not it. You with me? Like the doctor didn't make me any smarter. I really thought it would be. I'm like, this didn't even do nothing. It's just a piece of paper. But we do that. We mediate couples. We go into the prisons a lot, and so everything else you said. And I'm currently writing a book called "That's Crazy, No, That's God." That I think in October it'll come out. Because my whole life has been where people go, "That's crazy," and I go, "No, that's God."
Yeah.
So
now
I got to put it in book format. But hit me with the question, the final one.
Yeah, the individuals that's sitting on the fence, maybe someone who could actually put themselves in your shoes, your story. Like, that's my life too. But maybe they've even tried Jesus and it hasn't worked for them. But why Jesus?
Oh, I got you. Let me tell you something. If you are the one that says, hey, I tried Jesus and it didn't work for him, you didn't try Jesus. You probably tried religion or a form of godliness denying the power. And that's why you're still in the same thing, right? So I would say that Jesus is everything. Everything. And I know that's probably the answer that most give, that he's everything. He's the Lord of Lords. He's the King of Kings. But let me tell you something. The life you're looking for is in Jesus. Now, in order to have that life, you have to give up your life so that you could find it. So everything about you, just think everything, you're starting brand new. And I know that might seem scary. And I know that might seem hard. But what isn't hard? I always attribute things, it's kind of like going to the gym. In the beginning, you're like, I don't want to go. But once you get there, I never seen a person get to a gym or a small group that once they leave, they go, oh, that sucked. You know, they're usually like, man, that was awesome. You know, you feel bigger. You look in the mirror, right?
Yeah.
So, like, really go all in. Like, all I did is I tell people, man, I don't know much. I have the knowledge of love. I continue in his word. So I'm a disciple. And that's a big difference. The Christians never called, the disciples never called themselves Christians. Only the people that saw them following, keyword, following Christ. So they were following, and then they go, oh, there go the Christians. The disciples calls themselves so like this, a slave. Oh, man, those words hit different. A bond servant. Come on, a disciple, a follower of Christ. The other people on the outside, on the sidelines, maybe you were one that called, most people that call themselves, I'm a Christian. And they're always beating their chest because they're a Christian. They might not be.
Yeah, it was like a word that was even at some level like meant to be offensive. Like,
Oh, no,
look at
totally.
those little Christians over
Yeah,
there.
all day long.
Yeah.
So go all in. You already know how to go all in. You always ask yourself this question. Most of the things, you know, I always tell people, most of the things that happen in our lives that are like, is because the Lord showed me this with my neighbor and my cutting my yard. He said, you only cut your yard, Juan. You know, I used to be like, man, look at his yard, right? He said, well, you only cut it for $30. He fertilizes it. He waters it daily. He goes out there, almost talks to the plants. You with me? He's doing all this stuff. He's feeding the grass, feeding the soil, right? He's putting more, like all this stuff. And he goes, that's why his looks like that. He goes, you're complaining about cutting. That's all you do. So I ask that question all the time to me. Am I just cutting with my wife? Am I just cutting with my friend? The person I'm leading, am I just cutting the grass? Or am I actually doing everything I can? So for the person listening, I would say complete surrender, man. Go all in. What do you got to lose? The world's still there. You know, this started for me as saying, you know, I'm going to do this. And if it don't work, I'll just go back to selling drugs. I'm 16 years later. I'm still, if it don't work, you with me?
Yeah.
My first couple of years, I used to wake up almost with a little bit of anxiety. I used to think, when is this going to end? It was that surreal for me. I was like, is this going to end? Because it just kept getting better. You know? I used to tell my wife, man, we're going overseas. She's like, when? She's like, you got child support. God covered everything. Before you know it, I'd hand deliver a check. So even that, I think it was like 30 grand. I hand deliver a check. So boom, I could get my passport. Every single thing, every step, right, has been, the first year was the hardest. That's it. Your first year is going to be the hardest. Because your first year, everything in you is going to tell you to go back to the way that you know. It's kind of like you get to the place where the water ain't split yet, and you want to go back. That's what everybody does. On the other side is the promised land. So you got to stay there until the staff is lifted. And so don't, this is the first time that I didn't go back. This is the first time, you know, with my wife, I always tell people, I attribute our good marriage that I did this, hey, listen, I did this wrong every single time. My baby Ruth, man, I knew God loved me when he gave me a chocolate bar, right? My baby Ruth. She's the first woman in my life ever that I honored. We didn't have sex for that whole year. And if you're getting out of prison, you understand me. It's the first thing you want to do, right? It's the first woman I said no to. It's the first woman that I was like, no, we're not going to do it. I was like, you ain't married. I ain't married because we did it our way. Let's just try it one time. What we got to lose? And so it's created trust. It's created moments when I go, hey, I feel like the Lord is telling me. She listens because she knows that for a whole year. You get me?
Yeah, you sacrifice your own desire.
Yeah. So everything's going to be new, and you got to be okay with that. Everything. New friends, new everything. You got to be okay with it. That's where most people fail. So why Jesus? That's where your life, you want life, that's where it is. And until you give up yours for him, you'll never understand why he gave up his for you.
I love it. Well, I honestly, your story, it reminds me of so many, like even celebrities, man, that the shiny lights, the shiny objects, the influence.
Yeah.
And I think everyone comes, especially the young cats out there that are still dreamers, man. Like, and I'm not telling you not to dream. Like,
No, I get
dream big, but chase the right things. And because story after story after story of individuals that just want to chase a life to be known. I promise you, it's better to be known by one than it is by 1,000.
Hey, listen, I'm afraid of that. I tell people all the time, a lot of times what happens to pastors that were raised in good homes and all that, I already was the man. So I know that about me. I'm very aware of it. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
So because I'm aware, I approach with caution. If a person's been raised in church his whole life and he becomes a pastor and all of a sudden, we'll use the term blows up, he doesn't know that at all. So he's more liable of getting fooled. I mean, we all are, but I'm saying that's what we should be praying for. Some of those guys have never been the man, and the world or the people make them the man, right? So now they don't know how to handle that. I don't want that no more. That led me to prison. I don't want that no more. That led me to kill, steal, and destroy. So I'm very careful. I'm very I take my wife everywhere I go. I mean, she travels at the hip. When we have a disagreement, I'm like, yo, you packing, like you going. That's the last thing I need you not to go. So, yeah, I agree with you, man. I think this thing has to be handled always in humility, and you always have to remember that you would be nothing without him. That if you're anything, it's because he put you there, and he expects you to handle that and steward that properly. And the goal is, to be that example to the best of our ability, right? To steward him. And I think I still thank the Lord when I pay my car. 16 years later, when I pay my car, I get in the car and I go, thank you, Lord. When he pays my light bill, I go, thank you, Lord, because that 8x10 cell is still real to me. I still remember the cold floor. I still remember the dark nights. I still remember bleeding. I still remember affecting people. I still remember beating people with pistols when they opened their door. I remember that vividly. My wife only knows this one, so she's over there sitting going like, oh,
Yeah.
She doesn't know that other one. But I remember that one. And that one, not good, man. Not good. And, I'm just grateful. I'm grateful. I feel saved. I have pastors that work for me that their whole life they've been in church. And they go, man, I never thought about lordship the way you look at it. I go, bro, if I let go, the hem of the garment, I would have been the guy in the story holding on to Jesus' leg. And he would have been walking with me,
Yeah, you'd have make a ball and chain.
Yeah, I can't let go.
Yeah.
I know me. And that me had, we're going to keep him in the grave because he ain't good. Yes, sir.
Well, thank you, brother. I love you.
Man.
Love you hearing your story. If you're watching on Pando app right now, I just want to encourage you to subscribe to Get Rap Church. Juan Martinez, amazing man. Obviously, been there, done that. Now living this, and you can check out his book, Prison Break, which is 21 Days to Spiritual Freedom. Amazing book that just came out, and I know you said you're working on your next one, but loved having you. Thanks for being here.
Oh man, it's an honor. You're amazing. I still think you're Italian.
I don't know what I am. I'm a mutt. Hey, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the God Behind Bars podcast. And I just want to thank you as a listener for your continued support and encourage you to share this with as many of your friends and family as possible. It is our heart and goal to tell the story of what God is doing behind bars with as many people as possible. And so as you share this amongst your friends and family and on your social networks, it allows us and supports that goal. Number 2 is if you would love to make a gift to God Behind Bars to help us continue the work and to grow the platform of what's happening here as a ministry, I want to encourage you to go over to godbehindbars.com/donate. And no matter what you can give, it all helps in making the mission and vision of introducing as many people to Jesus as we possibly can and connecting them to the local church. And so thank you so much again for being a listener. And we pray that this encourages you just as much as you've been an encouragement to us.